All right, there are 25 of you here. Now, I just got internet back like an hour ago, so I haven't ran any of my projections are up, but I haven't actually ran anything based on those, so I'm getting that set up right now in the background. Let me make sure this audio is working. Make sure. Oh no, where's my remote? Can't. Let me make sure I can hear myself. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, all that's working. So let me go ahead and get this set up to run in the background, and then I can look at what my lineups would be looking like. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to put them in the chat. We can go over. Also, like, I'm free to just chill here and talk for however long we need. So, and I got to tweet this out as well. I've been like everything I do, post Q and practice, I had to jam in as soon as I got my my internet back, and also I have very mixed emotions about yesterday. One, I'm very sorry that the internet went out. Two, I'm more sorry that I couldn't shut down the fucking stream because like the internet went out. You can't access the restream room from your phone to end it. So like the dead signal just stayed alive for like 8 minutes, and I feel so bad because that's like one of the highest viewed like Xfinity videos ever, and it was like it's like 30 minutes long. Secondly, there's like, if I remember correctly, there was like 40 live viewers when everything went out. Dude, I had everybody and their mother DM me on every platform, Discord, Twitter. I mean, you guys let me know that my screen was black and that you could not hear me. I mean, I kid you not, I got like 24 DMs and messages and notifications saying that your screen is down. What's wrong? What's going on? Let me go ahead and tweet this one out real fast. What's going on? Let me get this tweet out. And then before I do see we got some Byron talks in the chat. First off, this race lines up very much with where my preview stance is or was, or like a lot of the stuff I said in my preview video for the Cup Series specifically, of who I want to target and stuff right now. Let me just type this or get this tweet out. Yet again, now is the time to type in any questions you got, anything you want me to look at specifically. Because once this show gets rolling and I run out of steam and I got nothing to go off of, that's when we shut her down. Let's see. Look at that. Also, you know what? I do. Like, I used to think the thought of war was pretty dumb and stuff, but like, losing internet on a actual day that I got to work and I can't really do anything past it, like, it was somebody took down one of those telephone poles by where I'm at, and literally, luckily, I didn't lose power. I just lost internet. But I was like, man, I'm bored. What do I do? I can't watch YouTube. I can't do any of this stuff. I mean, I could on my phone, but like, what am I gonna do? Read a book like a freaking loser? Let me get this tweet out. All right, whatever. That's good enough. And so now I'm like, okay, yeah, now I understand when people would just like bludgeon people over the head with like clubs and stuff in like 1750. Because like, dude, life is boring. Life is boring without the internet. That's it's pretty lame. Okay, I got that done. All right, so now let me go ahead and make sure I don't have my projections on screen, so I don't give them away for free on complete accident here. If you don't want access to them, or if you do want access to them, the Discord, access to Sheets' projections and everything else that we offer here, you can join us at the link in the description below. Let me go ahead and add this. Sorry that it is kind of scrambled, but I have not had internet for very long, so I've had to get everything back very quickly. So first off, I don't necessarily want to talk picks really fast. I just want to go over the data that we're looking at. And, usually I say, I like this person. Then we go through and look at the data and explain like, oh, this is why I like it. Let's kind of go the opposite directions. Let's find people that make sense today based off of recent form, based on practice laps, based on 5-lap average. Now, and we're looking at practice laps yet again. Thank you, AD, for being a real G and letting me use your stuff because clearly I didn't have internet, so I couldn't pull my own practice laps and stuff. So when we're looking at the practice laps, when we're looking at averages, because I sort them by averages, um, ideally we want low or slower average overall times. If you are at the top of the practice speeds uh, in practice laps through all your laps and your average is very fast, that's actually a really really bad thing for a track like this. And so this is the grid we have. Let me take this off. This is the grid we have. Thank you. Now the chat, 68 of you guys here. Thank you very much for being here. So like clearly this is the grid. We're not going to talk picks right now. Yet again, we're slowly removing last year's data and we're looking more towards kind of where we've been at as we continue to go along here. And we could just kind of go through the field. Like I said, we're not going to really talk picks. We just want to see, where do these guys line up? How has Larson been doing? How's good old White Power doing? And we see that Larson, last year, towards the later half of the year at these short tracks, starting with this race last year, we see that Larson is pretty much a top 10 car. It'll vary on what track he moves up into the top 5 at, but we've seen that he's pretty much a top 5 car here, or a top 10 car previously. When we look at the last 2 races this year, we've seen that he struggled at Phoenix, ran into issues, but had a pretty decent car last weekend at Richmond. And so when we go ahead and look at the practice laps, Larson is pretty much right where we want to be at. Also, I removed the first 2 laps. I think I'm going to, well, first off, we can't have, okay, we're just going to get rid of David Starr. We want pure, David Starr, you're clouding the gene pool here, man. Let's just get you out of here because we want pure drivers. So that doesn't completely ruin the color coordination here. And we have slow laps early. I removed the first 2 laps because those laps were slow. Guys warming their tires up, et cetera, et cetera. And this is kind of like early runs. I'm going to go ahead. Let's kind of just look at these. I'm not going to update the number, but I would just like to visually see better. So a lot of these are still in traffic, running into an issue, trying to get around somebody early in a run. I'm not too concerned about removing early laps from this stuff, but I just want my eyeballs to not get frustrated here. Let's get rid of these here. So where are we looking at Larson? Larson ran a lot of laps. We see that he has very little fall off and pretty fast laps, specifically later in the run. And we're understanding that we want to have long run speed at this racetrack. Okay. And we're going to talk about the 2 groups here. I think this is a fantastic practice for my little argument of like, yeah, the groups might be different, but they don't fucking matter really. So like, we'll get into that too with the different groups and where these people were at. But just looking at these here, Larson pretty much where I want him to be on averages. You don't want him up top because like Cindric and McDowell, for example, have really cars or have fast cars or ran a few laps and then they just fall off a cliff. Like that's bad. Now we do have like 1-2 laps dragging these guys down, but still like you never want somebody to be this fast in practice and then you see where they qualify, specifically like with McDowell and stuff. Like he has no long run speed at all. When we look at Larson here and we look at where he lines up compared to where he's racing, the people that he's racing at, and this can be defended in 2 situations. So one, if you're ever concerned about, well, they got really, really good long run cars, but like, man, 17th best on 5 lap, that's not good. Well, he got the pole, my guy. I understand he came from Group B and all the guys in Group B were faster than Group A, but still, that's good to see. When you can back it up in Q, when you can back it up in the long run speed, like I think it's very hard to dislike Larson here as we go through. And yet again, that's just how I come through that's how I basically do my projections. I just walk you through how I came up with Larson's projection. Okay. So like, I think Larson has a pretty decent car. I think he runs top 5 all day. I think he leads a significant amount of laps a day. I think at least looking at this type of stuff, because you can see I look at old data and then recent data, not for Martinsville specifically, but I look at kind of where they're at, where they're running, and we look at and compare that. Like, are we seeing anything out of the ordinary here? We know that he's going to have a top 10 car by default. We're seeing that Larson's doing everything that we want him to do and see in practice, and then we see what he's doing here. That's good to see. We're seeing that he was able to back it up in qualifying. And then we understand that, hey, man, this isn't just a Larson day. We understand how fast Hendrick is. We'll talk about that as we continue going through drivers really fast. Let's kind of gun through these guys. So same thing with Bubba Wallace. We can see where he's at. Let me make sure I'm sharing the stuff so I'm not just jumping through. And I am. In case I talk too fast or whatever, you can always pause and just look through this stuff. But same thing here. We see Bubba Wallace. midway or in the middle of the long run, which is right where we want to see. It's very concerning yet again. Everything I just stated, like we never want you to be up top on averages in a practice session where you could run like 60 something laps. Ideally, we actually want you being one of the slowest guys because that means you ran a super long run and stuff. And so, like, whenever you see, averages for like Hamlin, Elliott, Logano, Gibbs, like these guys being here, we understand that they're not the slowest cars. They're just there because they ran so many long laps, et cetera, et cetera. We see Bubba Wallace, pretty decent speed. Not a really bad thing to see. Came out of Group A, so like any concerns there, I would not have any concerns at all. But I don't think we're seeing anything wildly different here yet again. By default, you could say that like Bubba Wallace is by default going to have like a 10th car. You can just bump him down and a projected finish, in my opinion, of like right around from like anywhere from 4th to 11th in that range. If you want to be a little bit more, tight on that squeeze, probably 6th to 9th would be better. And then you just calculate, hey man, does that projection work at $7,700? If he does anything worse, then clearly it doesn't work out. But that's how you go through. Once we get through Elliott, and there's two things here, and we'll talk about it more as we analyze everybody. But man, if Larson actually runs away with this race, there's a real chance that you can still pay up for very expensive drivers, and it'll be Byron and Bell. So we have Elliott here, clearly out of the Hendrick stable. I'm sure everybody saw what I tweeted about, like, this fantastic. These cars are so sexy, man. I love the color red. And it's not even my favorite color. It's just one I can see clearly. Scarlet red is amazing. Wine red is awesome, especially on cars. But this ruby red, oh my god, it's so fucking sexy. Why don't we just run pretty cars all the time, guys? Can we just run these cars all the time? We're understanding, and I'll kind of bounce back between Elliott, Hamlin, and Byron here, but we understand that Larson has a flying fast car. We understand that this car is out of the same stable, and we're seeing that Elliott is pretty much the worst of the Hendrick cars here. Okay, and when you look at specifically in the practice sessions, we had two of the Hendrick guys in Group A, we had two of the Hendrick guys in Group B. We see that their speeds are very similar. Okay, so it doesn't matter if one group is drastically slower or drastically faster. When you're seeing cars that we understand are probably going to be the fastest groups or the fastest team in today's race, and we see that they are pretty much all aligned with Elliott, Byron, Bowman, and Larson, you can really start to back up this data point of where these guys are at, especially when you look at two guys who are in different groups. Like when you look at Byron, I guess I'm not going in order. When you look at Byron specifically, because I want to talk about Byron. Byron was in Group A, Larson was in Group B. They qualified in separate groups as well. And when you see how similar these times are, especially on the long run, okay, like like when you have a fast car, you just have a fast car. It doesn't matter. Okay. And when you're looking at where these guys are lining up, yeah, you might argue that, Group A had a faster early run or whatever, but still, we're looking at late run speed. The fact that we are separated by pretty much nothing here between these cars, that's very, very nice to see. And so when you're looking at Elliott here, and you're looking at Bubba Wallace, and you're looking at other drivers in the top 10, even Truex, like this is where you have to pinpoint where Truex is at. Okay. We look at Truex, understand by default, top 5 car. Very hard to argue that. When we look at where he's at, same thing. Good to see at the bottom of the average speeds because that means we ran a lot of laps here. Okay. We're seeing that in this run and with where Truex was in. Same thing, Group A. So Truex was competing directly against Byron in Group A. Isolated from Group B, isolated from other cars. We understand the speed that Byron has, okay? Regardless if we like him as a DFS player or not, him being in Group A and running the speeds that he did is going to be a good indicator of where you are at in comparison to that car and in comparison to the other Hendrick cars, since we're seeing pretty similar speeds here. And so when you look at Truex in this run, we see that he is struggling on the long run, okay? We're seeing that, yes, he is, basically an identical lap time early compared to Byron, but we see the fall off that Truex has here, okay? Why is that important? Okay, when we're looking at this in a DFS point of view, not a point of view, but like a DFS perspective, and we see that we have Truex starting 4th, and we see that Byron is starting 18th. Christopher Bell is starting 20th. Let's look at Bell's stuff really fast as well. And if I'm going over stuff or you guys don't agree or something, please put in chat. If I'm wrong, let me know. Let's talk about it and stuff. I want to learn, but at least I'm trying to explain where I'm coming from in this type of stuff. And so when we look at Christopher Bell as well, so Christopher Bell was in Group A, so he ran directly with Truex and with Byron. Okay, and we see that when you're comparing these guys here, yes, Truex had a faster speed on the short run and he fell off. And we understand that, we're basically pinning these two times against each other. And we're seeing very similar times between these two individual cars and stuff. And based on where Byron ran lap times compared to Larson, you can argue, or I'm going to make the case that when you're running pretty fast speeds on the long run, regardless of what session it is, that's going to be a good indicator of where you're at. And so when we're looking at Bell and Byron specifically, we see that they have pretty fast cars. We see that they got fucked in this stupid queue that NASCAR does. They weren't able to advance. They're starting in the teens. They are competing directly against Truex, Chase Elliott, other guys up front. Okay, and they are showing here, yet again, this 400-lap race. I'm not saying that, it's easy to pass here at Martinsville, but I would be shocked if Byron and Bell are both not in the top 8 by lap 307 or something like that. As we enter the last quarter of this race, I would not be shocked to see Byron, Bell, Truex, Hamlin all filling out from 7th to 4th or something, And so when we're looking at Truex, when we're looking at Elliott, when we're looking at the guys up here, paired with guys who are running pretty fast times between Bell and Byron, okay, fuck Larson, fuck getting the laps led. That doesn't even matter. It matters who's gonna outscore who between Byron, Bell, Truex, Hamlin, Logano. Okay, you might argue that why am I bringing Logano in? He's a bit cheaper, but Byron's 98, Logano's 95. When we're looking at this race here, and we're seeing the speed that Larson has, and we're seeing that he's got the stupid, plane crash blue or plane crash blood red paint schemes here, I think Larson leads a lot of this race. I think he's the primary lap leader in this race. Okay, and so if that's the case, outside of him speeding on the pit lane or something, I would lean towards doing a solo build with Larson. Okay, and then paying up for place differential with Byron and Bell because I think they're going to be eventual top 6 finishers here. That's the direction that I want to go primarily up top in this price range. Yet again, not just jumping in. These are the picks that I like. This is where we're at. I started with the data points we're looking at. Like when we look at Bell and how he performs here. Okay, now I understand, last year, this is where he was at, which is still, better than 20th. That gives him some place differential points. We see that he had some good races here. That gives him some place differential points. When we see where Joe Gibbs and Bell specifically are at, remember that Bell got a speeding penalty last weekend at Richmond. Outside of that, he most likely competes to win this race. And regardless if we have the restart race, also, who cares about the restart? Who cares about the restart? NASCAR never follows their own rules. Why is it a big deal here? Have you guys ever heard of the double yellow line? I mean, if you haven't, well, boys, you guys are in for a riot, man. I can't wait to hear you guys bitch and moan about the double yellow line rule. But Bell is competing directly with, I would say he's the best car of the Joe Gibbs cars so far on the flat tracks, with the having to drive through the field that he's been doing, starting the back that he's been doing, and still running fast laps, still being a top 6 car, top 7 car in these races. I think Bell is the main front runner for Joe Gibbs. The fact that he's 10-2, he's cheaper than Truex, he's cheaper than Hamlin. I like paying up for these two guys here. Okay, and yet again, it's due to looking at kind of where we're at. We're seeing that, wow, these guys are pretty identical plays to the guys up front. If Larson does run away with this race, it kind of defaults to, these guys that offer place differential showing up and performing here. And that's kind of where we're at there in terms of the more expensive guys. And so really the reason why I'm kind of waiting so long is because I'm waiting for this stuff to load. So let me go ahead and take this screen off really fast. I want to see what my lineups are looking at now that I've ran them. I'm going to assume that I get quite a lot of Larson and Byron here. But let me go ahead and just look at kind of my exposures of where my projections are at. And so the guys that I have the most exposures to in terms of when I sort lineups by projected lineups, haven't ran contest sims. I'm just going to look at where I have guys projected for It is very much 100% Larson. Byron Bowman, Elliott Bell as my most owned guys up top, which yet again, I think that is based on my opinion of kind of where these guys are lining up at. Now, I'm not saying that means you can't play Truex and Hamlin. Clearly, if we're building a lot of lineups, you want to go, a lot of 1v1s and stuff. But I actually really like just a one lap leader build today with Kyle Busch now, or not with Kyle Busch, with Larson. Now that I got that done, the main important thing is to find out where I'm going and where the field is going in the value range. So we're seeing quite a lot of the 7K guys, Briscoe, just the Stewart Haas guys who are offering place different. Well, Briscoe's in 5th, but Gregson at 71, starting 26. Carson Hocevar starting 25th. McDowell at 63. And it's looking like, and sorry I'm kind of walking you through my live reaction of this stuff, but now now that I understand kind of where we're at, what I'm doing personally is I'm just going to hand build a start of a lineup so I can see where we're at in terms of average salary. So Larson, Byron, Bell. Even if I'm not doing that, if I'm going Larson, or if you're going Larson like Truex, Bell, or whatever, you'd get 3 10K guys in this. You're going to be right at $6,000, anywhere from 63 to 58 average. So going back to kind of where we're at here, that's why Gregson is popping up so much between these projections here. Because he seems like probably the easiest guy to get to that actually offers somewhat like viability, because Chastain's 83, Kyle Busch is 81. You have to build around those guys if you want them in your lineup. Alex Bowman is starting 10th. And so if you're looking for like a safe play in the 7K range, clearly, we're not going Wallace, we're not going Briscoe, we're not going Barry. Priest and Gregson default to that. So I'm going to assume that Gregson, Priest, Dylan's interesting with having his new crew chief. And maybe they won't completely just kill him. But it seems like Gregson and Priest, and it seems like Gregson's probably the most popular play in the 7K range. Why that is important, you're going to get to him in regardless of what way you're building. So Gregson should be pretty high owned today, I would imagine. And I'll bring this screen up in a second. I'm just getting done looking at all this stuff. And then we're back in the 5K range. So seeming like ownership and builds are probably going to center around possibly, I guess I can take this back off now that we're looking at 5K range specifically and stuff. Okay, so now that we're here, we're understanding that we kind of understand where builds are going to line up, regardless of where you're going. We're understanding that when we're looking at the 5K range to fill out lineups and trying to project what the field is going to do, or predict what the field is going to do, rather, that is where we could start looking directly at this type of stuff. So like Harrison Burton, for example. Eyeball test is like probably the safest play here. Now, has scored fucking horrendous DraftKings-wise this year. I have him for 23 points today. So that would be actually one of his better DFS days today outside of the race at Atlanta and Daytona 500. Because he has been abysmal. But he has been starting in the mid-20s in all these races, or out queuing where he's been at. And so both of these races here, he started higher up in the field. The fact that he has literally nowhere to fall back on or back, through the field, because he's going to be out. He's going to be outrunning David Starr. He's going to be outrunning him, Rick. I'm going to assume that Harrison Burton is going to be popular. I'm going to assume that LaJoie is going to be popular, because he's going to be high in the averages, which personally we don't want to see, but that'll drag people to him. He ran in Group A. So yet again, this is where like people are like, well, you see, Group A is kind of fishy, because like, it's not really a good representation of where these cars are at, because like some guys are going to be fast in Group A, but they're not fast in the race. Like Brandon, I don't know about that. And I'm like, well, okay. So we've looked at the fast cars who had speed in Group A, and then we look at Corey LaJoy, who's like wicked fast, dude. Totally tubular, totally a fast car here. But then we look at where he's running, and we're like, yeah, like no, he's not a fast car. That's clearly, first group on the track. Actually, he was one of the first cars on track, actually. Like running fast. I mean, you hearing in his interview, he's like, man, I'm talking to a sports psychologist, talking to my therapist. Like, I've been struggling with confidence lately. Like, we're just slow, man. We're just slow. And it's like, like LaJoy is not going to have a top 5 car here. But in terms of DFS wise, when you're having to build, $5,800 for LaJoy, $5,400 for Harrison Burton, Hocevar 59. Like we're having to go towards these guys, and when you're in the 5K range, I'm more than happy to pay up for LaJoy, who offers me a little bit of safer play than Zane Smith, than Justin Haley. I'd rather go to Harrison Burton. And so for me, like when I'm looking at the bottom of the salary stuff, and I'll come back to the chat and we'll kind of talk about the mid range or the rest of the plays and the rest of the field. I'm more than happy to pay up for place differential in the 5K range today. That's what I'm seeing from the builds that I have and the projections that I am working with. So let's go ahead and see what you guys are talking about here now that we've been live for quite a long time, nearly half an hour, having looked at the chat. Thank you for the 120 of you guys here joining me this morning. What's going on, Brian? What's going on, Gator? What's going on, Noah? So thoughts on Byron? Talked about Byron a lot so far. Yeah, sorry for the video yesterday. So with the Bubba Wallace Briscoe lap leader, I think Bubba Wallace has a much higher chance of doing that. Let's take everything away I've just like stated about all the other guys I like, and let's focus on Bubba Wallace and his likelihood to get laps led in this race. Okay. Because this is a guy that isn't just like, well, in some situations he could lead laps. In other situations he might not lead laps. Let's make a real case for Bubba Wallace, because yet again, his pricing is the main importance here. It's not, is he going to get laps led? Like it's what can he do at $7,700? Okay. And so we're seeing where he's at here. Okay. Which in order to get around Larson, because he's starting, Bubba's on the outside. Okay. So he's got to get around Larson. He's got to defend Elliott. He's got to defend Truex. Briscoe, like he has to get a fantastic start, beat Larson, get around him, and stay in front of Larson. Okay. So are we seeing something that we can argue for that, or see that as an outcome, or see that as something happens here? Okay. Yet again, we're fine with where he's at here. When we're looking at where he's at specifically head to head between him and Larson. And yet again, Bubba Wallace was in Group A. Okay. And so actually we probably want to actually compare his lap times to William Byron, since they were an identical. Like we understand that Byron's fast. We can use him as a placeholder for Larson here, because clearly when you're looking at this, he's like way faster than Larson, but he's he's right on par with Larson and stuff. I would actually rather use where he's at in terms of Byron, because they're in the same thing. We can understand where he's at. So we see that they're basically identical speeds here. And we're seeing that there's not a lot of taking a given from either one of these guys here. So then we can look at, okay, Bubba can have a pretty decent car. He can have a good run. He can compete with Byron. And so the first answer to the question is, Bubba early lap leader is, can he beat Larson? I'm looking at situations to where, yeah, like there is realistic expectations, and there's a realistic chance that Darrell Wallace Jr. can compete with Larson if he can get a start that's decent. Now, the aspect that now we're looking at, like, a secondary or, secondary inspection or whatever. Now, let's compare exactly where we're at in terms of Byron and Bubba Wallace on like lap by lap stuff. Did somebody get into traffic? Did something happen to Byron here? Did nothing happen to Byron? Let's look at where we're at here. And so we're seeing that early lap run, it's Bubba faster. Byron faster, Byron faster, Bubba faster, Byron faster, Byron faster. And so we're seeing that these guys are pretty identical, and they weren't racing side by side, but this is just where we're at in terms of the practice times and stuff. And once we get a little bit farther on, I want to see exactly how big this discrepancy is of flip-flopping and stuff. So Byron had a lap at traffic. That put him at a 21.3. And we're seeing that, so Bubba Wallace might also be in traffic here, but we're also seeing that, like, once Byron, you could argue that this was a pass and traffic let somebody go or whatever. We're seeing that, this is 3 laps, so this is like, minute and a half of racing stuff, but we're seeing that Byron is faster deep in these runs than Bubba Wallace. And so we're seeing the fall off. Like right now, this is the first 26 that we've seen from Byron compared to Bubba. And we're seeing that, Bubba ran a fast lap, so it could have been in traffic as well. So both these guys are in traffic. So they're pretty much identical in terms of their lap speed and stuff. And so answering your question, Bubba potential lap leader, I have given Bubba laps led in this race, and I've given him fast laps as well. I will actually tell you the projection I have for Bubba Wallace, and this is dependent on him leading laps, but I gave him 42.2 points today. That is a 5.4 value, and that is with the expectation that he maintains running position in the top 5, potentially gets laps led, and or scrapes off fast laps. If he doesn't do that, he's unplayable. So in terms of the Bubba Wallace potential lap leader, if you're doing 20 lines, I'd probably have like 25, 30% Bubba. I'd want to be over the so this situation where I would actually want to be over the field on Bubba Wallace, despite the fact I don't think he actually works. Even though my projections have him at 42 points, like when we're building and trying to figure out how you want to diversify your lineups, diversify is the wrong word because I don't diversify shit. Like I'm very overweight on all my lineups. But in terms of what the field is doing and the likelihood of it happening, like we're seeing data points here that if Bubba Wallace gets around Larson, there's a real chance. Yet again, I think Larson's a better car, and I think Larson would just actually move him out of the way. Not rudely, but I think Larson would get around him. But we're seeing that, Bubba Wallace getting the lead and leading laps has a much higher chance of happening than probably most people would actually give credit for. So let's see what Sheets has. Bubba Wallace is his projected ownership here. I don't remember if he updated or not. Because I know he's flying back in today. He may have done it before he took off, but let's see what he has Bubba Wallace at as an early projection for ownership. And I apologize if we're kind of taking a long time to get through all this stuff, but yet again, I'm barely just getting through this stuff. This is also why, I don't do preview shows anymore, or maybe not as extensively as stuff, because this is everything I would do before the live show, Saturday night, so I don't have to do this live and waste your guys' time. But let's see. So we look at Bubba Wallace projected ownership here. So let's go ahead and see. So Bubba Wallace, Sheets has him at 19. Saber Sim, which is pretty horrendous, absolute, straight up, I'm going to say it, absolute dog shit ownership. That's one of their worst aspects for the NASCAR. But let's go ahead and see what they have. So they am at 16, so that's 3 points difference. So going back to, if I was playing 20 lines, I'd probably have 25, 30% Bubba Wallace. I mean, that's 6 lines if you're playing 20. That's not that bad. We've thrown away money doing other dumb shit. Secondly, that'd be twice the field, realistically, at least double the field, depending on where he comes in at. And there's a real chance. So if Bubba Wallace gets laps led here, I'd want to be overweight in the field in that situation. And if he doesn't, well, then I'm perfectly happy having those 6 lineups. I don't even think they're dead lineups either, unless Bubba Wallace falls out the fucking top 15 or something. Because I'd build them probably with Larson. I'd do probably 4 of those 6 lineups would be Kyle and Bubba together. So if I'm wrong, I still have Larson leading a ton of laps. I have Bubba at $7,700. That's a situation where even if Bubba doesn't lead laps and take away, that doesn't kill those lineups. So that's my very long-winded answer to a question that was asked nearly half an hour ago by Matthew, if Bubba or Briscoe lap leader. Let's talk Briscoe real fast. I'm not as high on Briscoe. That's mainly why I spent the whole time talking about Bubba Wallace here. The situations that Briscoe needs to lead here is a lot more You're asking for a lot more than Bubba Wallace here. I would lean towards, if you want to take a different approach between Briscoe and Bubba Wallace, I would go all in on Bubba Wallace in that situation, and I would not play Briscoe. That's where I'm at there. What's going on, Ken? If you get the projections, that you can answer that yourself. In terms of who are my favorite dominators. Well, I'm not playing 4 dominators. I don't even think there is 4 dominators in this race. Favorite lap leaders for this race, pivot lap leaders, straight up favorite lap leaders for this race. We're gonna go back here. Actually, we'll go on this one here because I like this sheet better for me to see, rather. In terms of lap leaders, like people that I would actually consider being lap leaders, it would probably be these individuals. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So probably the 8 guys that I would truly consider leading laps in this race. Realistically, like Logano can lead, get on pit lane, whatever happened. Like realistically, I can't truly see Logano leading. And outside of like, well, we made an argument for Bubba Wallace. My true lap leaders would probably be like these 4 guys. I think it's, or these 5 guys. I think it's these 5 individuals who compete. The next one would be Elliott. But I don't think we see a lot of lap leaders today. I really don't. Especially if Larson does truly kill this field. I mean, it's going to be hard going through Larson to get the lead. Again, kind of going back to, that's why I'm kind of more so up for paying for Byron and Bell, because I think they can both finish inside the top 7 today. And they're going to score a ton of points. When we're looking at raw points here, when we look at what the projections are for like Elliott, Hamlin, Bowman, like, yeah, sure. I mean, if these guys lead a ton of laps, they're going to outscore them. But just baseline alone, like you got, and even if I'm not being aggressive on Byron, let's just remove any laps led and fast laps I have from Byron and just base this on pure finishing position. Floor, but I think Byron's at 49 points. I think that is Byron's floor. I think Bell's floor is 45. And that is with no fast laps, no laps led, and like fringe top 10 performances from both of those individuals. Whereas, in situations where Hamlin doesn't get the lead, Bowman, I mean, you guys already know this, but like straight up, like I think Byron and Bell are better plays than those other lap leaders and stuff. And this is a race that I will be aggressive on just chasing Larson as the primary lap leader. That's where I'm personally at. All right, let's go through. Yeah, fucking Eclipse. I'll have to check that out tomorrow. Check it out tomorrow on my day off. Busher talking 86. So yeah, Busher. So clearly my stuff isn't one to play him. So let's talk about how I came to my. I don't even remember what this one is. Okay, yeah, that's the. I was like, what? This is hidden by my camera. I was like, what sheet is this? Yeah, it's just the queue. When we let's look at Chris Busher here and really dissect where we're at with Busher. So we look at where Busher's been and where he's been at this year, top 10 car. We see him at 30, okay? And finished 9th last week, 6 fast laps. Started 14th. And we look at where he qualified. And so, I'm not saying that's the end of the world, because it's offer and place differential and stuff. Also, with this price tag, like if we're paying up for a lot of guys, because I'm paying up for these guys, I can't get to. I personally cannot get to Busher. I'd have to build around him. But let's kind of talk through where I'm at in terms of his projection stuff. And so when we're looking at Keselowski and Busher, Keselowski was very started 23rd, finished 8th last week, got 2 fast laps. When we're looking at where Keselowski is, because I like to view these guys together and see if there's a big difference here. So it was seeing that they were both top 10 cars. The practice laps, pretty much identical times between these two individuals here. When we're looking at Keselowski in terms of like this is where it is a bit worrying. And Keselowski was in he's in Group B. So the faster group, for what it's worth. When we look at Busher, and Busher's a 30 Group A, poor qualifying situation, or situation rather. And we're looking at where he's at, and let me look at where I projected Busher at. So I gave Busher, let's see how drastically off this is. I gave him 8. No, wait a minute. I gave Busher, gave him 17th today. So clearly that wouldn't work. Like, he's not even playable at that situation. But even when we start bumping his, so we give him 17th. That's 40 points. 4.6. Give him 15th. It's right around 42. Give him 16th, or give him 14th rather. 16 place differential points. It's right at 44. Okay, and so he starts becoming playable, truly at like 50 points when he's like scoring a top 10 finish here. I am leaning more towards he gets stuck in traffic, because this is going to be, Martinsville is very, very difficult to pass. And I'm not saying he can't get there, but what I would do, or where I'm at, is I'm probably lower on Chris Buescher than the field here, especially looking at where he's been performing. But when I look at where he's at as Martinsville races, that's, right in the middle of these two situations here, that's right in the teens, man. And so if the field wants to play a lot of Buescher, they need him to have these types of situations, okay? I don't really want to play the chalk, or if he's going to be chalky in a situation where he's going to be for like 14th to like 19th and stuff. Because Buescher could score well at 14th, and he can still be pushed out of the optimal lineup depending on what people do. If he finishes 9th, he's forcing his way into the optimal lineup and stuff. And so I would lean more towards him finishing in the teens today, and probably getting close to value or just over value, but being pushed out by other scorers in this event, especially other scorers who could possibly be scoring high 50s or low 60s. That's where I would lean, or that's how I would answer that, rather. Let's go on VVP. Oh, Dave, I did not know you were Mile High in Discord. I did not. So I don't use ownership. I don't project ownership. There are people much smarter than me that do ownership. Okay, I don't do ownership. I usually, because my projections are typically not that bad. So if I build this is a situation, good example of a situation where it might be different, of like, clearly, like, I'm probably lower on Buescher, and I just explained the projections I'm giving him. So when I build my lineups, and yet again, this is with like Larson being optimal, him working out, I can usually look through the lineups that are built, sort them by projected score, look at the top like 3,000 lineups, and then see where ownership is at with my own stuff and my own exposure, and have a good feel of, okay, that's kind of probably where ownership will probably be at or fall in line. Or if I'm somewhat accurate in the projections, typically that's just how I figure out ownership on my end. Now, yet again, I'm not going to publish that, because what do I got here? Like my top 3 guys are 100% ownership to Larson, because I have him locked in. And then it's like Byron 57, Bowman 54, Elliott 30. Like, clearly it's not going to work that way. But when I start looking at like in the value range of like what 7K guys are being played, what 6K guys are being played, what 5K guys are being played, and then look at where they're being fit into my lines, I'm like, okay, cool. That's kind of like the Harrison Burton play, the Corey LaJoie play. Like, I think those get more ownership than, Zane Smith, Hocevar, and stuff. So I don't do my own ownership. And frankly, I just use Sheets' ownership if I do have a question on it. But I've never made my own ownership. I've just always had a feel for where guys are coming in at and stuff. Stuff like that. Playing 100%. I'm personally playing 100% Larson James, so I think you should as well. What's going on, Kyle? What's going on, BG3? Bowman pick. Yeah, dude. Thank God. Thank God Bob didn't pick I don't know, anybody actually viable or whatever. Um, I am dying, David Starr. You got to go. What? Oh, yes. Thank you, Peter. I'm glad. I'm glad that you found that funny. Dude, it's so funny. Dude, like I love just making people annoyed on Twitter, man. Like I just rage bait on Twitter all the time. Uh some people love I think my humor comes across way better in a show or like talking to me. When you're reading on just a text on Twitter, man, sarcasm and humor does not land at all through text. Um so like I'm not playing Hemrick personally. I'm just personally not playing Hemrick. I'm not going to play Stenhouse at $6,000 because when we look at where he's at here, wrong one. When we're looking at where Stenhouse is at, you look at where he performs, and so he's at 6,000. So what is that, like 36 points or something? He needs 30 points. He needs 30 points to pay it off. And we look at where he's at in terms of starting 23rd. Okay. And we look at where he's been at. And yet again, this isn't finishing position. Like, this is just where they run. So clearly some people can finish better, but this is what I like to look at. Because, gaining positions late on a restart or people crash out and stuff, that's just a bonus. Built upon whatever this is. But we see Stenhouse right in the middle of the pack, second half of the pack. He's starting 23rd today. We look at his practice laps, and this is a concern. You never want him to be this high up. That's scary. And then we look at where he's at here, and that's pretty nervous. And so we don't see anything specifically, flash and being like Stenhouse is going to be a fantastic, great play today. And so when I look at him at 23rd, I gave him 19th today. Okay, like that's not egregious. That's not anything crazy. I don't think that projection is cuckoo, is nuts, and that's 27 points. So it's 4.5. You give him 1, 2, 3, 4. Give him like a few more, in the teens as well. He's like at 29, 30 points here at $6,000. We're gonna need him to do a lot better than just, probably 19th, 18th to fight his way into being optimal. And then when you look at where he's at in these races, like that's gonna be a bit of a stretch. Now he did it earlier at Richmond last year or at Martinsville last year in terms of speed. He's right at, I was like 16th fastest. So like even giving him like 17th today, would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you give him like 17th and he's scoring like right at like 31 points. Just at value, just over value. And so when I look at stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, I just can't play the guy. I can't even bother looking at Stenhouse and stuff. And that's just how I justify everybody. I look at where they're at, look at the projection I have, look at the projection that they would need to like start forcing their way in and be like, man, is Stenhouse going to finish like 15th, 16th, 14th? I just don't. I don't think it. I don't think so. I don't see it. I'm not saying he's going to be 31st, but like Stenhouse should be like 22nd all day, right? 22nd, 21st, 24th, 25th. He should be in this range. And so like that just makes him not very playable. DFS wise and stuff. 133 you guys here. Thank you very much for being here, by the way. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. I never ask for subscriptions or likes and stuff, but just thank you guys for being here. I just like you guys being here. That's mainly the thing that matters to me. Thoughts on Zane over Hocevar Stenhouse? Yet again, I would lean towards paying up for a place differential in the 5K range. I don't like it, but I think I'd rather play with joy, and especially if I'm playing as risky as I am with. If Larson has a bad day, it's fucked anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But I would like to pay up slightly for place differential. Now, specifically between these three individuals, I would play Hocevar between Stenhouse, Zane Smith, and Hocevar. When we look at where these guys are at, like Zane Smith has had a pretty rough time this year. Very same argument with Stenhouse. We're going to need him to like really show up, and that's concerning. But when we look at Carson, Like we understand that Carson is actually somewhat competent. I would prefer Hocevar in that. The real argument is actually, do you play Hocevar or LaJoy? Like that's the true question here. Yet again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 place differential. That's not even place differential spots. That's a safety net that LaJoy has over Hocevar. Now, if he does this, it doesn't matter. If he does this, then it matters heavily. If which Spire, this team is wild, man. They they started off so great. Now they're just back to being the fucking slowest guys in the pack again. But like, if Hocevar finishes 26th and LaJoy has a terrible day and finishes 29th, like LaJoy is outscoring him. He's a better play. Like that's the real argument to be made between Hocevar and LaJoy. And I would personally lean to the safety of LaJoy than Hocevar. Let's look at these two actually guys individual. Let's look at Hocevar and LaJoy isolated. Now, Hocevar was in Group B, LaJoy was in Group A, but let's just see where these guys are at in terms of this. So clearly, LaJoy is going to be up here. So let's move this down and have LaJoy be the top guy. Okay, so that's LaJoy. Clearly, we have Hocevar highlighted here. So let's just see where these laps are at late in the run, because we're going to clearly have LaJoy be faster. Let's see if they ran similar amounts. So Hocevar was not very happy with his car. I'm looking at LaJoy, my bad. Or I'm looking at Haley, my bad. So they both ran the same. We remove that lap time. 25, 25. LaJoy is at 25, 26, 25. So he goes into pit. Comes back out, makes an adjustment. Whereas LaJoy, and I guess that's why, maybe not, could just been in traffic as well. Looking like they're going to have pretty identical speed. I mean, this lap time is actually identical. Just happens to be on their 22nd lap. I wasn't even trying to do that, but it looks like LaJoy and Hocevar are going to have pretty identical speed. Clearly, that makes sense. They're out of the same stable, same team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yet again, I would just play LaJoy, man. And that's where I would go between those two there. Darren, I kind of answered that with the Hemrick, Burton, Gregson. I mean, Gregson is clearly, these are drastically different point plays. But Gregson, we talked about it in the preview video. We see where he's at in practice times. We see where he's at in scoring. Like we have no reason to be concerned about the Stewart-Haas cars when they have a bad qualifying, because they've shown time and time again this season they can overcome that. So that's not a concern there. He needs like 36 points to pay it off. I think we can see Gregson very easily compete to do that. So that's not a concern with Gregson. The what else was I answering here? Hemrick and Burton. I would lean towards Burton over Hemrick. Like when we look at Hemrick here, I mean, dude, Hemrick is so fucking bad. All these jokers are terrible, man. These guys are all horrible. Like there's like, yeah, dude. I would go Hemrick if you need the salary. I don't think you do. Even if you're paying up for so many guys, you don't need to go min salary today, and so that's not a concern. I would just play Harrison Burton over that. Let's see. Favorite 5K, kind of talk about that. Thank you, Bad King. Because yet again, I didn't have internet at that. That's why, like, all this is just live. I had internet for like an hour before the show. Had to get everything done. I haven't even looked at anything past that, so I don't even know who else. I haven't learned. I haven't even listened to any other content. I haven't done anything like this. This is all just where I'm at. Where I'm thinking. That's in the Penske guys. Blaney and Logano. I'm not playing either of them. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I've seen enough from other stables, from even the Joe Gibbs cars, all the Hendrick guys. If Logano and Blaney lead, well then everything has lied. Everything has just been wrong from the start. This stuff, Q, everything. It's been a horrific disaster. It's been missed from the start. Happy race day to you as well, Matthew. Glad you liked the show. Alexander, thank you. Eagles, best of luck for you today. Thoughts on Suarez? That's on good old Suarez. So, yet getting $6,000 when we talk about building up or paying up, Gregson, Suarez, rest of 7K range. Priest, Gregson, and Suarez, and Dylan. Those four truly need to be talked about and considered. Dylan, like I said, there's nothing other than the crew chief change that's leaning towards Dylan being playable. Now, typically in situations like that, I like to be ahead. Let's get this title and shut off. I like to be ahead of the curve. I like to try and chase things that might happen. So we had a crew chief change for the 3 car. Okay. We know that Dylan has been abysmal. Now the Phoenix isn't fair because he got involved in the wreck with Cindric when Kraus spun out of 2. But if the strategy change that Dylan is going to start doing with this crew chief is going to be more similar to this type of result, okay? Yet again, he's 28th. That's not a huge, like this is fringe top 20, fringe high teens. Like that's a concern, but I'd much rather be playing Austin Dillon in a situation like this to where nobody would be playing him in a situation where it's kind of an unknown of what the team is truly going to do. Do I think he's going to finish top 15? Fuck no. But he's competing directly with Gregson and Suarez. And he's not really competing with Gregson. I think Gregson outscores him, but he's competing with Dylan. He's competing with Suarez, very similar to the Joy and Hocevar play. Suarez and Dylan are probably closer plays than people want to argue because, like, Suarez has also been pretty lackluster. We haven't seen this type of speed out of him lately, so we're seeing that he's very much finishing here, where he's not really offering much upside because his projected score, based on where he's at, and this is just based on this type of stuff. When we look at his practice laps, okay, ran long run, so we're seeing that he's good at the bottom or towards the bottom of average now. Is this because he ran a long time or is he just slow? So let's take it out and look here. So we're seeing that he's just actually kind of slow, which yet again isn't going to mean he's running last, but it means that Suarez is most likely going to, and this is like Group B, so the good group should be a good idea of where you're at in terms of speed. That's why I like this. Do you get at this point, do you understand why I get so frustrated? People are like, well, the different groups, like I'm so sick and tired of that talk. There's so many ways to understand and get around that. Like that's not even a discussion. It isn't even a point of like contention. There's so many ways to understand that data point that just bringing it down to, well, group 1 is different. Like, yes, but like we can still find whatever. I'm not going to go in anymore. We're seeing that Suarez is not like showing off wildly fast speed here. So we can see that, like, yeah, realistically, like expectations for Suarez would be like to finish 15th, 16th, on a good day, or he gets stuck running 20th all day. And so like when we're looking at where I got Suarez at, I got him projected for like 17th, 16th, somewhere around there, and he's right at 31 points. That's 4.4 value. That seems like a big like I don't want to play him because then like in order for him to be really playable and viable, like he needs to really fucking perform. Like 11th, 10th. Do I see anything that's going to help him get there? Man, not really. So like I can't really go to Suarez. So that defaults to Gregson being a pretty good play, and that defaults to like the risk of playing an ugly Austin Dillon play. Well, like Suarez, from my understanding, from looking at my stuff, like Suarez might outscore. Okay, let's look at it like who's going to be a better play. Like I have Dillon for 30 points. I have Suarez for 31. So like that's not really making a change there. But like in order for Suarez to be scoring more than like 31, 32, 33 points, like he needs to start moving up higher. Whereas Dillon just needs to like start moving up and get like, let's see where I got Dillon at. He needs to be at like 20th, 21st and stuff, and especially in a situation where, hey man, Suarez, doesn't really have that speed, gets stuck in traffic, doesn't really have a good race. He finishes 20th. Oh man, here comes Austin Dillon. He finishes 22nd. Austin Dillon's outscoring him. And so like, yeah, Austin Dillon seems like an ugly play, but like if you want to get different, especially if you feel like you got a lot of chalk, I would probably play Dillon. Same thing with Wallace, where I'd want to be over the field on him, even though I don't think it's going to work. That's the same logic I have with Dillon. If I was going to be playing a lot of lineups today, I would play probably, 4 to 5 lines with Dillon, be way over the field or be way overweight compared to the field on Dillon. And if he works, he works. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Like that's at least how I approach and build lines and look at stuff like that. Do I think he's a great play? No, I think Dylan looks ugly, but that's the true case to be made when you break it down. And that's why Gregson should be chalk. Gregson should be very, very popular because there is no negative statement towards Gregson at all. We're talking about pivots off of Gregson or playing Dylan and Gregson together like that. And yet again, that's like, I don't do ownership, but when I look through projections, when I talk through lineups, when I look at everything, like Gregson seems pretty popular. He seems like he's going to be very viable and he's going to carry a lot of ownership and everything like that. Let me go ahead and look through again or go through the chat. Thank you guys for asking questions and everything as well. I do appreciate it. Let me see what else you guys are saying or doing or anything like that. 120 of you guys here for an hour show. I do appreciate it. Let me go ahead and look through the rest of the chat to see what else you guys are saying. I do got to check one thing on my own stuff real fast. Hold on. Una memento. All right. McDowell, I assume, would be high owned, starting 35th, based off being 33. So when we look at McDowell, so we're seeing that. First off, let's talk about Todd Gillen and his actual performance here. Like this is pretty impressive. Yet again, not playable DFS wise because his price tag, doesn't allow him to be playable with what he's been doing. But I've been very, very impressed with how Gillen has been performing. And we look at McDowell. So McDowell last week was basically running. I don't remember the exact thing yet again. So one, he caught a lap down when the caution came out. Stole a lot of fast laps. So we're not looking at his fantasy point. And if you look at it, average his running position, it's going to be held back because he's a lap down. This would be a situation. I don't really want to do this live in case it goes over. But unless I'm wrong, this situation would correct me if I'm wrong here in the chat. Not after the video, because I don't give a fuck, because I'll check it myself after this. But if I remember correctly, McDowell was like 25th, 24th all day. Couldn't do anything. Pitted to get off sequence, went a lap down, ended up being he had like the 30 best car and stuff. But we didn't see a lot of speed from McDowell last weekend at Richmond, whereas he performed pretty decent at Phoenix and he performed pretty decent at these races here. Now, the main concern with McDowell is how shocking this practice is. This is concerning, man. That worries me a lot. Because Phoenix, Richmond, I'm not saying it's easy to pass there, but those are places to where you can pass easily. Whereas McDowell, you start 33rd, it might be lap 187, and he might be in 27th place. This is an entire race length performance from McDowell to pass people. It is going to be a very long day for McDowell, and I don't think he hits value until truly the last quarter of the race. When we look at where he's at, 35th, has a high likelihood of being trapped a lap down at some point in this race. That hurts his likelihood of truly passing people. I gave McDowell 25th today, okay? I think he gets stuck a lap down. Who's calling me? And I think he gets stuck a lap down. I'm not very high on McDowell here because I think he struggles getting trapped a lap down today. And I think he struggles going through the field. And that's where I'm at. Now, with that said, I'm for 25th. We start moving him up and give him a 20th place finish. That's 38 points. That's 6. Clearly, that's going to work. He's 63. So yet again, more not price sensitive and stuff. But yet again, I'm probably lower on the back place difference because I'm clearly lower on Buescher today. I'm clearly lower on McDowell today. But I do believe McDowell will probably carry a lot of ownership because he's starting back here. He's 63, easy to get to, especially if you're building a lot of lineups. Yet again, when we're paying up for Larson Gibbs, or not Gibbs, Byron Bell, or you're paying up for Truex Hamilton, whatever the case may be. You got around $58 to $6,300 left over. McDowell is going to probably fit into a lot of lines. And yet again, if I like LaJoy, even though I don't like him as like, I don't really believe in him, but LaJoy, McDowell easily fits in the lineups. Very, very safe. Very, very safe. The floor is very, very safe. Even if they have a bad day, there's people who are going to be scoring worse than him. Yet again, very long-winded way of saying that, like, I don't really like McDowell as a play, and I'm probably still going to play him. But I am very concerned about him being trapped lap down and performing quite poorly today. So yeah, that's where I'm at there with McNeil. Who falls out of the top 10 based on speed? I mean, not even so yet again, falling out of the top 10 in speed and finishing, or DFS wise, is drastically different. You know, I don't think that's the right question to ask. Because like, you know, Briscoe and Barry, I think they finish anywhere from 7 to 12 and stuff, but like they do that, they're not viable in terms of like playing like DFS wise and stuff. It's more so who works their way into the top 10. That's how I usually answer that question, because it's very difficult for me to start bumping guys out of the top 10. I'm gonna have to end this show kind of soon. Actually, I gotta respond to this person real fast. Hold on. But it's not a question of who moves out of the top 10. It is who moves into the top 10, because that is much more easy to project and have an idea for. So who are people who are starting back here who are going to most likely be top 10 contenders and stuff? Like Blaney will most likely gain positions as well. I know he's starting ninth, but like he'll probably be in seventh all day. You know, Kyle Busch, Chastain can all fight their way into. But we look at Ty Gibbs, who will probably be 11th all day. Byron, Bell, Reddick, who hasn't been performing well at Martinsville as of late, but Reddick realistically can run like 11th all day. Byron, top 10. Bell, top 10. So, like, that's at least two guys being forced out or moved out. You know, that could be somebody like Bowman. That could be somebody like Barry. Like, I don't think that, at least for me, I never answered that question specifically. I just always look for people who can get into there, especially if you were to look at my projections. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people projected for a top 10 finish today. Clearly, that math doesn't line up, but that's just kind of how I do stuff. So I don't think that's a question that I would ask. Thoughts on Eric Jones? I just can't get to him. I think there's much better plays right at where he should be. I think he just kind of holds position today. You know, we look at Eric Jones. I got him for 16th, unplayable. Cannot even fathom getting to him DFS wise by just holding this position today. Let's see. But at that point, you have to play some value plays. Kyle, I also don't. I mean, I've been live for an hour now, you know, but like I've talked about value plays and stuff. I don't know. I feel like I've talked about a lot of things. Priest 72 because he started on the pole last year. He's been doing pretty decently. And outside of speed on pit lane, he probably would have performed very well last year in the first Martinsville race. But 72, like when we look at these races here, we look at where Priest has been or how he's been performing. 41 points at Bristol, 32 points at Las Vegas. And I mean, Priest does statistically do better at short tracks and stuff. So like he is warranted the $7,200 price tag. Recently, you know, showing that it's not really going to perform that well, but looking at last year's performances based on where he is at on speed and in the car, he's basically a top 10 contender here. Last year, don't know if he gets up there today, but that's why he is $7,200 because he needed to be. He couldn't be, and I think he probably should have been like 74, but they needed to move his price up past that. Gibbs, I mean, you know my opinion on Gibbs. There's nothing here, certainly for today, there's nothing here saying that like Gibbs is going to be standout play, but I would lean towards If you got lineups, I think you should play like 4 Gibbs lineups, man. Just keep playing him. Be over the field. He needs 45 points to pay it off. Now, I think this is this is one where I'm playing Byron and Bell with Larson. I can't get to Gibbs. But if you're not doing that, I have no reason to dislike Gibbs as well. But who's my favorite plays today? It's Larson, Byron, Bell. That's how I'm going to build, and I'll decide where to get different in the value range past then. We've been live for hour and 10 minutes today. Thank you guys very much for being here. Sorry that I lost power yesterday, but that's mainly it. If you guys have any additional questions, you can tweet at me or DM me on Twitter, or if you're in the Discord, or if you want to join the Discord, you can join in link in the description below. You can subscribe, get the NASCAR package, or man, I'm just getting flooded with messages. And yeah, if you want to talk to me, you can join our Discord and get in there. And I think that's really about it. Anyway, see you guys later. Have a good day. Best of luck. Enjoy the Sunday. Enjoy the eclipse. Enjoy the Hendrick cars doing this special thing for Hendrick Motorsports with 1,500X and current employees from Hendrick Motorsports there. And Rick Ware isn't even going to fucking bother to get at the track. So, like, I don't know why. I don't get it. Like, people get mad at me, but I was like, look, man, I'm calling spade a spade, man. Sherry Pollux, she had cancer, was not going to live very long. So when I was like, look, she's going to die soon, everybody got mad at me. I'm like, look, I'm just saying statistically, terminal cancer equals not lasting long. Statistically, old man Rick Hendrick probably not going to be here much longer, man. Is that an asshole thing to say? I don't think so. I mean, Richard Petty's going to die soon, you know? Richard Childress is going to die soon. Rick Hendrick's going to die soon. Roger Penske's going to die soon. Joe Gibbs is going to die soon. Like, they're all old. Anybody at that age, you just wake up, you're just happy to be alive. Like, within 10 years, we're going to have all new owners of these big teams because all those guys are going to die. And so when I look at Hendrick, I know he had like surgery on his knee, but like, come on, man. Come on, brother. Push that surgery down. What are you doing? I'm not even saying, like, it's not even like you're rich or whatever. Just move it a little further down the line. Like, you're telling me your whole team is doing this? You're going to drive the pace car and you're not showing up? Like, I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. I don't get why he would miss that experience as an old man. I just don't understand why he's not here. I just don't get it. Anyway, I'm going to end it on that. I'm going to end on that. You guys have a good day. I'll see you guys later.